Nothing more fun than talking about sales acceleration. Much better than deceleration, right? Okay, so we're just a little over our start time, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We're going to be digging into quite a bit of insights that hopefully will be helpful for you in accelerating your sales performance. So as the title of the webinar says, we're going to talk about the three components of sales acceleration. Before we jump into the agenda, let me just quickly introduce myself and Growth Era, and then we'll dig in here. So my name is Bryce Kaspar. I'm the CEO of Growth Era. I've had a long career, not to date myself, but I started my sales career with Dell Computers back in the dark ages when computers were a lot bigger than they are now. And throughout my career, I've been in sales leadership roles, very entrepreneurial path, mainly with startups and scale ups. And so I've been in the trenches of sales for many decades. And from that, there's a lot of lessons. Some of these are fundamentals that never change. And then other things have to adapt to the time. So I'm excited to talk about these key components of sales growth. Just a little bit about Growth Era. So we are a full-scale sales enablement company. We work in the areas of the sales ecosystem that we're going to be talking about today. And I'll dig into those more, but at a top level, we are an outbound lead generation company. We are also a CRM services company as one of our service lines. We focus primarily on HubSpot. And we also have down funnel service products that help you with conversion, maximizing the effectiveness of the sales team that you want in sales meetings. So brief overview on us. Why don't we dig into the content and I will get us rolling. Going to share my screen. All right, so if everybody can see my screen, we're going to go ahead and jump in here. And I want to make sure that we can see the screen. Put a chat out real quick. Terrific. Haven't been using Zoom too long, so just want to make sure you're not flying blind. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about these three areas that need to be balanced in a strong sales system. We're going to cover some points on sales CRM optimization, building quality pipeline. Now that you have the pipeline, increasing your win rates, because that's what it's all about, right? Generating revenue is why we're all doing this hard work. And then I'll touch on some of the key factors related to, do I build in-house or do I utilize partners? So this is to give you some things that you can look at after our learning here today, baseline your organization, and maybe you're tight and strong everywhere, or maybe this draws out some areas where you could tighten up and help you accelerate growth. Okay, so what are these three components we've been talking about? And operationally, which is where we're really focusing today, it starts with your sales CRM. The CRM is your revenue factory. It's where the work is done to produce sales. So the CRM is an absolutely critical piece of an effective sales system. Obviously, the next component, pipeline generation, well, qualified opportunities are the raw materials of revenue. It's where things start. So you've got to have a good, healthy flow of deals coming into your pipeline so that you have something to mold into revenue. And once you have those raw materials, now we have to convert them. So think about that like your production facility. I've got I want to convert the highest quality product, and I want to do that in the most efficient sales cycle time. And I want to have the best output. I don't want to have many defects, right? So these three areas we're going to dig into with some more detail today. All right, so let's start with the CRM. Again, your revenue factory. As you think, as we talk through this segment, I'm going to leave you with some questions that you can go back and baseline. I'll share this presentation afterwards, so you basically have your checklist. But let's just talk about, at the most fundamental level, what you need to set up a CRM effectively, be it HubSpot, Salesforce, Zoho, Pipedrive, any of them. They all have a lot of commonalities there. They all have to have these three things. So the first thing, and we see this often, is what are the data needs? What do I really need to measure in my CRM? What data do I need to be effective? And that is absolutely critical as a foundation. I know that's not exciting a lot of times to think about that, but you really need to think about, in your specific business, what data do we care about with contacts, companies, deals? What do we need to measure? And once you know that those properties, that information that needs to be in the CRM, now you need to align your sales process with the CRM. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but most CRMs are not, really all of them are not going to come aligned to your sales process. They're going to be out of the box. So you need to look at your sales process and align that to the way your CRM operates, so that it's driving you forward, not creating more work for you to try to get the sales process through it. And to that point, a good segue into, what functionality do I need in this CRM? CRMs are a carnival of functionality these days. There's a new feature coming out every week. It's like a features race. And so it's really important to understand what functionality really aligns with my business, with my target customers, with my sales process. And I want to leverage those tools, but I don't want to get overwhelmed with all the other features that can just kind of be paralyzing sometimes. So if I think about the challenges in achieving those three things I was just talking about, it comes down usually to four major issues. And these are things we see. We've worked with hundreds of companies. We study and look at sales ecosystems every single day. And we don't just look at it as an analyst, someone just looking at just numbers in the market. We're actually in the trenches operating. So these are the things that we see commonly. And the first is that the sales CRM is not tailored to my business needs. As I mentioned, it's a one size fits all usually when you do an implementation. And so you're working in that factory that's not really optimized to your production line. That's a common challenge we see, because you kind of have this expectation sometimes when you do your standard implementation that now this is going to run perfectly for my business. So ask yourself, is the process we need to run, are our business needs really infused into the CRM, or are there some disconnects there that we need to shore up? So the second big challenge is CRMs are complicated. And, way back in the day, all CRMs really stemmed out of Excel, honestly. And they used to be a lot simpler. Today, they're very complex. That's good in one way, because they have a lot of capabilities they didn't have before. But on the other side of it, they're not very easy to configure. Reporting can be a real rabbit hole. And the features, whereas they're very powerful, if they're not working with clean data, with your process, they can do a lot of damage fast. And so that's the dark side of these features and automation if your CRM is not geared to your business. And so a lot of organizations, certainly not all, we probably have a variety of people on this call. So for some of you are like, hey, we have a whole team that does this. Others, hey, we're struggling. It's a bit of a ghost town, or our CRM's a bit of a Frankenstein right now. But that limited technical expertise is something that's really important because there are specialists who work in CRMs and they keep up with this information regularly and they know how to use the tools in the box, so to speak. They're carpenters within the CRM. And so that limited technical expertise can be a problem, either by inaction or taking the wrong actions when you're setting up or modifying your CRM over time. Another key issue is having governance over the CRM, having a dedicated CRM admin. You can have a great setup today, but if you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen changing things, maybe for a purpose that works for them, but it cascades over to another side where now my reporting doesn't make sense in this area or this workflow is broken. You really want to have governance of the CRM, a filter or a gate, so to speak. When there are changes that need to be made, it goes through a process of vetting that to make sure that those changes don't break something somewhere else. And then the last piece, and I'm sure a lot of people are nodding their head because this is a tough one, it's user training, really user adoption, right? And in order to adopt, we have to train our people well, and then we have to stay on that. So user training can be a big hurdle. All of these CRMs have a big knowledge base out there with generic videos. They can be very helpful, but really you want to train people to your factory, not a factory, but your factory, the CRM. So these are some things that after this webinar, you might want to go back and caucus with your team and say, where do we sit on the spectrum here? Are these things tight? Are they non-existent? Or do we have some areas we need to shore up? And I'm very much focusing on fundamentals today instead of getting into the specific weeds. And the reason I'm doing that is every business is different. So if you get the fundamentals right and you can be strong for your business in each of these areas, then you're going to have a great CRM that works for you. I will admit, as we go through, I'm going to be kind of brief because we're talking about all three areas of the sales ecosystem. So if any of you want to dig in deeper, obviously here to support, but I'm going to move now over to building quality pipeline. There's obviously a lot of ways you can build pipeline. If you're an early stage company, you're probably building pipeline through your close connections, through referrals that you have from maybe previous or current colleagues. If you're past that early stage and now you're into the market where you need to go out to people who don't know you, there's a lot of ways you can do that. Obviously, there's trade events, there's advertising, there's social, a number of channels, right? One of those channels is outbound, and that's what I'm going to focus on today because this is one of the most powerful channels for generating quality pipeline. It's also one of the toughest ones operationally and from a workforce standpoint. So today we're going to focus on some of the aspects of outbound that are really most important if you have an outbound function or you're looking to build one in-house or you're just looking to acquire one. And so this visual here covers really the anatomy of what any outbound lead generation function needs to be strong in, needs to have in place. The first component is sales operations. So back in the day, there really wasn't a whole lot to sales operations. I can remember, late 90s, early 2000s, if I needed to build a list, I was either going to go spend a lot of money from a research company that was specific to that segment, and I would pay them for that list that they did kind of painstaking, usually manual research to get. Or I'm trying to build that list myself, out on the internet and so forth, taking leads from trade shows, all of that. It's a very different ball game today. Today, sales operations should be and has to be a strong part of your team if you're doing any kind of list building, any kind of outreach. And quite frankly, in a way that it goes for inbound or outbound. But when it comes to outbound, building lists, uh, it really is like lassoing the information I need and making sure that it's accurate. So, for example, here at Growth Era, we use about 9 different pieces of tech stack, 9 different platforms to build list. And on top of that, you have a sales operations manager who is making sure that that data that's coming in actually fits the ideal customer profile. AI can do a lot of things fast, but it really can't do it independently. It has to be guided. And so the way I look at AI and these platforms is these are the tools. You have to be the carpenter. And list building is really important because it all starts with the list. When you're thinking about generating pipeline, I can do everything else right, but if I'm not calling upon the people that I want to be my customer, then the rest of it really doesn't matter, right? So in sales operations, you're usually going to have or always going to have these functions: list building. Now that you've built the list, you also have to measure, how is this outreach going? So you've got campaigns that you're building, and now you need to analyze how they're working, whether it's a phone campaign, an email campaign, a LinkedIn campaign. You need to have analytics, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. That tech stack also needs people who understand and know how to use the tech stack. So just like the CRM's changing all the time, so too is these data platforms, things like Zoom, Ocean, Clay, Apollo, Navigator. The list goes on. You want to pick the right data sources that are going to help you build quality lists, and then you need to be on top of actually leveraging those platforms the right way. So sales operations cannot be underestimated today. Unfortunately, what you'll see is any of these platforms are going to advertise to you that this is it. It's just push button. You just get on my starter plan. You tell me who you want. It's going to bring you great leads. But reality is it doesn't work that way, where the rubber meets the road. So moving on, if I'm going to be building list, it's really important that I have a clear picture of my ideal customer profile or profiles. And you need to do that on 2 levels. First is, what accounts am I going after? What are the companies that I'm targeting? Where are they? What do they look like? What are the criteria, right? Their size. These are all the things you need to have to be able to build good lists in the beginning. And then you have to create the messaging that's going to resonate not just with those accounts, with those companies, but the people that you want to reach within them. And so we'd call that the buyer group, right? So you may have multiple people in the buyer group. You may ultimately want to get up to this CEO or director of technology or director of operations for manufacturing, what have you. But you need to define their roles, what messaging resonates with them. And you may have to go through a few people to get to them that are influencers or champions in the buying group. So the playbook is really, really important. I encourage you to put a lot of energy and effort onto your playbook, because that's what's going to guide the outreach you're doing. Any playbook, you also want to have good objection handling in it. So when you get that, you've got someone on the phone and they ask a question, you need to be able to know what those top questions are so you can overcome that hurdle quickly. You also want to have the processes you run in your playbook. And what I mean by that is, maybe these 5 types of companies are great, they would be good, but this one far and away is the best customer. If I could fill up my customer base with these type of folks, that's who I want. So you want to prioritize your outreach so that you weight the time you're spending and the effort you're making based upon who you most want to bring in, your best fit customers. A lot to it under the hood there, but just kind of giving you, these are the elements. Okay, so you've got a list, you've got a playbook, you've obviously got email campaigns going. There's some automation there on the top end. You may have LinkedIn campaigns going. There's some automation on the top end, but everyone here from experience, the highest converting channel is the phone. That may sound ironic with all the tech we have, but the phone is getting stronger, not weaker over time. And so you need to have good sales development reps. Some people call them BDRs, same thing, business development reps. Um, but you need to have good talent. And the way I look at the sales development reps is they are your frontline infantry for developing these leads that turn into quality meetings. You want those folks narrow in their role. I think role specialization is one of the most important things in a high performing outbound system. You don't want your sales development rep trying to run your list building tech stack. You don't want them writing playbook copy. You're looking for a unicorn if you're looking for someone like that. It's not very scalable. So think of the sales development rep as having a narrow role that they need to execute really, really well. And that's a perfect segue into the last component, which is your rep management. So it starts with recruiting the right type of people and then training them not just on your business, but even more importantly on how to execute outbound. Because at the top of the funnel, you're calling people who weren't expecting your call. They probably don't know about your business. And so they're not going to want to get into a bunch of product details or a long conversation on that call. It's kind of like a billboard on a highway. You just have to grasp their attention with something that gains their interest to say, yeah, now I would like to have a working session. I would like to understand if I could solve that problem or I could realize that gain. So very important that you not just do this up front, but that you train and continue to train and coach your sales development reps in their outreach. It's not a set it and forget it with the sales development reps. All right, so same format here. So that's what the anatomy of a outbound system looks like. What are the challenges? So the playbook is often a challenge. And one of the hardest parts of building a playbook sometimes is if you've ever heard this saying, I can't see the label on the bottle because I'm in the bottle. And that's what happens a lot is you have all the technical expertise about your product. You know how great it is. You live inside those walls. But how do the people that you're trying to contact and bring into those walls view it? And so outbound playbooks can be difficult in fine tuning that messaging to the market with a message that's really going to land and land quickly with the right people. This can often be a big challenge in messaging because there are some fundamentals in that. And then there's also a dynamic component of what type of messaging today is working the best out in the competitive field of everyone else trying to contact these prospective customers. List building, I've probably already belabored it, but you need to have strong list building capabilities. Not to sound negative, but if you're just using one data source and you're hoping it's right, you're probably wasting a lot of energy calling the wrong people, or you're missing a lot of the people who would be the right people, the right companies and the right people. So this is an investment to take seriously. If you have that expertise in-house and you've invested in the tech stack, don't let up on that focus. If you haven't, look for people who have expertise in this. Again, the list is the strategy, really. The sales development rep training is something that you want to have well organized. It's typically a challenge because what we see is a lot of times people hire a sales development rep. They give them some guidance. They say, you're going to make this many activities a day. But those folks need feedback. They need coaching. You need to be listening to their calls. You need to be doing that at a regular cadence. So this can be very resource intensive inside organizations. And a lot of times there's not a dedicated manager to the sales development reps. It may be someone who's the VP of sales who has strategic priorities, but they're also trying to stay on top of the SDR team as best they can. I recommend dedicating management to the SDRs. And the sales enablement platform is the last piece here. So when you're doing this outreach today, there's a lot, and you've probably seen this, there's a lot of roadblocks to outreach with email, with phone. You've seen those spam likely things pop up on your phone line, I'm sure. You've probably gotten a lot of spam heavy emails. So you want to be utilizing a sales enablement platform that mitigates those issues. You can never eliminate them completely, but for example, like with um, our sales enablement platform that manages all the calling, the emailing, we use T1 lines. So they're true phone lines. They're not something that's going to be popping up as spam. Just one small example, but you also want to have that system organized again to where you can prioritize your outreach. These are priority ones. This is the sequence we run. When we're making activities, we want to make sure we're making it at the highest probability prospects first and have that waiting so that we're generating more quality conversions of leads. Don't let your head blow up on that stuff. You can go back and think about each of these things, but these are the areas to look at. All right, so now let's look, what does it look like? So if we're going to put all of these things in place, how much does it really matter? And these are the key metrics when it comes to generating qualified attended meetings, which is the end goal with outbound sales development. And so the baseline numbers with the standard approach, you can consider this as the baseline of being healthy. Below this, unhealthy. At the standard approach, for all intents and purposes, you're on the doorstep of healthy. But you can see as you look at this that the delta in an optimized outbound system produces much better results all the way through. And one of the takeaways here is these metrics build on each other. So what I mean by that is if I have a really low connection rate, and connection rate means I've engaged them, they've raised their hand. It may have been positive, negative, neutral, but I've connected with them. I'm not wondering whether they're interested. I know that they're either going to say, let's talk more, send me some info, or I'm not interested at all, or maybe they're not qualified, right? But if you have a low connection rate, that means you don't have enough raw materials coming in for the connection to lead rate to really get you a lot of qualified meetings. So each of these metrics is really key, and you want to measure them because if you're low in one, you need to focus down on that so it doesn't impact you down the funnel towards a qualified meeting. You can see a big delta between these two systems. And at the end of the day, one that really jumps out at me is the qualified attended meeting rate, which means number one, they showed up. And number two, it met the criteria that I want for a deal. It was the right type of account. It was one of the people that I would want to talk to in the buying group. And you can see when all of these metrics are strong all the way down, you end up with a higher show rate. Why? Because you have someone who's actually interested to come to the call and they know why they're attending it. So these are the fundamentals to study within your outbound motion, whether you're doing it in-house or you're looking at an outsourced partner. These are metrics that you want to know about and be able to measure over time. Okay, so we're going to move off generating pipeline, and now we're going to assume that our pipeline's pretty full. We're filling it up. We're getting new quality meetings into our pipeline. And now the name of the game is let's optimize that. So back to the analogy of the revenue factory. I'm working in that CRM. There's quality deals in it. And now I need to have a good production process to not have many defects and to get the greatest return in the shortest amount of time. Return being win rate, time being sales cycle time. So if we think about what functions have to be here. This is where I have found through the years, the reality is sales, especially with a salesperson, emotion can create logic, right? So salespeople are very good at the good salespeople at connecting with that prospect, understanding their needs, educating them on the differences in your solution and what they're doing now or not doing now. But in between that, I have to be on stage. I have to be able to get to that next meeting with the right people. And so where we see sales systems break down the funnel, the biggest issue is operational. Let's set the salespeople aside for a minute and say they're good at what they do, but how can we give them more time to do what they do well? And this is where operations really matters. So, and this pertains to your CRM because that's where you're working, right? So data maintenance is something that has to be strong. You have to have clear, accurate data in your CRM. So you know who's there, you know what you need to know about them, you need to know what action you need to take next. And that can be a big challenge because the reality is most salespeople are more like rock stars than they are operations managers. They're great on stage, someone needs to get them to the gig. And the data maintenance piece is tough. You also need to have a good deal monitoring system. One of the challenges we see with a lot of companies is they have a great first discovery meeting. Everybody's jazzed. The prospect was engaged, but then the wind kind of leaves the sails when they go on and the deal starts to stall and they don't know why. So monitoring deals and knowing where they are, they're in this stage, these are the things that need to be happening is really important so that you're not feeling like you're out playing, sandlot football. I'm running plays, I'm trying to make it happen, but it's not prescriptive. And at the end of the day, sales is an operational process. Deal nurturing is really important because people aren't oftentimes, we love these when they happen, but they're like, great, I love what you do. Let's move to the next step. I'm ready to go right now. So you need to have good nurturing systems to stay in touch with intentional follow-up in between those gap periods so that we don't lose momentum. So deal nurturing is driven off effective deal monitoring. And then lastly, I cannot emphasize this one enough. Don't look at reports at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. Don't look at them in a vacuum. You really want to have a weekly tactical on your pipeline with your team. What is trending positive? What is trending negative? Do we have any deals that are showing that they're leaking out of the pipeline? Maybe it's overdue task. Maybe it's a deal that doesn't have a next task. Or wait a minute, this close date is in the past. A regular cadence to reporting gives you the indicators to know that I have a clear picture of my pipeline. I'm not operating on assumptions. I know where things are. And it gives you the intelligence to know where you need to focus down if you're getting stuck in a stage or you're seeing deals go lost for a particular reason. This reporting should be collaborative. It needs to be accurate, but it should be collaborative with your team. Okay, and I've kind of gotten, you can tell I'm a little passionate about pipeline management, and probably it's because you spend so much to get pipeline, you want to get the most out of it, right? But the common sales challenges are what I just mentioned, and I'll be quick on this, is salespeople struggle with data hygiene. And there's some really good reasons for that too. I mean, I would make the argument that you want your salespeople busy. It's really hard when you're going from one meeting to the next, or maybe you're doing an on-site customer visit and then you're on a plane. And so aside from the fact that some of the best salespeople aren't like really administratively focused, it's not their passion. Um, it's also just a resource challenge. And if you stop and think about that data hygiene challenge, you can almost think about it financially. Do I want this high paid salesperson that I want most of their time spent in front of prospects, spending a whole bunch of time trying to keep up with all the data points I need in my CRM? So that's a good thing to look at within your team. How much actual selling time are my account executive, my salespeople spending? And a lot of the industry research shows it's like less than 30%, which is astonishing, right? Um, and how do I get more of their time over to selling activity? So sometimes specializing that data hygiene function will actually save you a lot of money because you're overpaying for the function, even if it could be done well, by putting it all on the shoulders of your salespeople. Um, the next challenge is sales process friction points, right? The deal stall we all hate. And that's where I'd be examining my sales process. If you don't have your sales process documented, make sure you do that. Make sure that it's not just, well, we flow through, the stages are in the CRM. What we do here is we develop a sales process scorecard. And the difference between a sales process and a sales process scorecard is the scorecard actually has the roles within each stage and what their key actions need to be, what their responsibilities are to trigger forward progress to that next step in the sales process, to that next stage. So when you examine your sales process and you document it and you know where you stand in deals and you're having regular, quick, but effective sales pipeline review meetings with your team, that's where you can optimize your sales process and understand, well, maybe this is too many steps, or maybe we're asking for too much too early. Or another example, maybe we're getting too far down our sales process and we're forgetting this key role in the buyer group on the prospect side. And now we got to go back to the starting line and begin the process all over again. So sales process is absolutely essential. The third piece is coordinating that buyer group. So everybody's business is going to be different. So we work with all kinds of industries, but one of our biggest growth areas for us is with manufacturing, industrial, logistics, supply chain, those type of businesses. And a lot of times you have multiple people in the buying group there. You may have an on-site plant manager, for example, and then you have a financial person in the buying group. You could have multiple people there, and then you have technical people. So making sure that you're keeping that buying group, and a lot of times it's like herding cats, coordinated so that everyone who needs to be at that next stage and that next meeting is there can be a challenge. And really that takes effective administrative follow-up. And of course, I'll beat the dead horse here, good data in the CRM to know who is associated to that deal, who should be involved. And at this stage, making sure it happens. That is a big culprit of where good deals leak out of the pipeline. I already talked about the pipeline management meetings ahead of that. This can be a challenge because really this is a very solvable one. What I recommend is put a sanctuary of time weekly into either your sales tactical you're already holding or have a dedicated pipeline management meeting. If you spend 30 minutes a week on this, you will make a big impact in your sales performance. Don't let those meetings get canceled. Make sure you establish them and keep them. I know people don't like meetings, but people do like productive meetings where revenue is being generated. So they can be pretty exciting if you do them regularly. And this is where you see some huge differences at the end of the day in results. So by optimizing that down funnel sales system, that process, the things we've talked about here, you're going to see, let's go to the bottom here. The difference in the win rates can be tremendous, right? Now, these win rates are blended across a variety of different business segments. Your segment may have lower win rates. It may have much higher. I really wouldn't focus on the percent here as much as the delta. Um, and the leading indicators above that, much like outbound, a connection rate is my data good? So if I've got, 56% of my contact data in my CRM, it means I really don't know who to be calling. And if it's on someone's notepad or I don't know what their role is, all of those things around contact data, company data, this is where, as boring as it may sound, the data is the foundation for success for the other things to work well. So takeaway on this between a standardized and an optimized approach is baseline your data. Look at your CRM and say, what are my fill rates on the properties that I've established here in my CRM for this data? Um, it's really effective to do an audit. We do these audits often to help companies baseline their data and then have a roadmap for optimizing it. You can do it in-house as well. You just need to know what to look at. And these are the categories. Okay. So to round out here, do I build or do I partner? And the answer to that is it depends. It depends on your organization. It depends on your budget. I'm going to go through the key factors here and again use this prescriptively to look at your own organization with where you are now, and then it'll put you on the path to make educated decisions on it. So the first thing comes down to, in the area that I need to optimize in the component, be it the CRM, the lead gen side, the pipeline conversion side, how much expertise do we have in that specific area? And not just how deep is it in one area, but how broad is it as well, right? Because there's a lot of things that you have to be good at in these different components. So just do your check and say, am I solid there or not? And if I'm not, let's try to understand where those gaps are now, be it technology or just experience or messaging or what have you. The second thing to consider with in-house or outsourcing is, and we do this at Growth Era, there are things that we outsource, right? There's a number of things that we outsource because it's not our core competency and we want to stay focused on what is. But then there's other things that we say it makes far more sense to keep this in-house because it is our core competency and we're going to invest heavily in it. So resource allocation is part of making that decision. We all have limited budgets. Every single company on earth has a limited budget, no matter how big or how small. So when you look at the resources you have in-house or maybe considering hiring, what's the most efficient way to allocate those resources to get the greatest return out of them and, keep your budget as tight as possible? And so again, segue to the budget. Um, what is your capacity right now? Unless you just have unlimited funds or a big windfall, we all have to make hard budget decisions. And so we have to decide, like, let's meet ourselves where we are. How do we get through this stage? So if my budget is this much here, I may not be able to do the things I ultimately may be able to do a year out. So I got to prioritize my actions based upon what my budget capacity is. So that's another thing to look at and to sum up, and helps you compare in-house or outbound because, outsource, because a lot of times you can accelerate faster through a stage by fractionally getting expertise, resources, all of those operational needs you have without having to build it in-house. And then again, other times it may be worth it because in your long-term strategy, you want these capabilities inside your walls. And then the last consideration, because this is a webinar on sales acceleration, is time to market, right? Maybe we can build it, but how fast can we build it? And so you want to look at that aspect as well and really align that time to market need with where your growth strategy is. And it's not just initial time to market, but it's also agility. How can I change? How can I pivot if I need to? Am I having to unwind software contracts that have annual subscriptions? Or am I utilizing a partner or service where I have much more agility to make a change if I need to scale it up or scale it down? So these you have to look at inside your walls. And I think it's really important to do that before you take any actions of things you're not already doing today, or maybe that you're considering changing. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. And again, this is to give you a starting point to assess your baseline and hopefully through some of this information identify some exciting areas that you can press on, that you can prioritize to accelerate. Um, Baseline where you are in each of these components is really the first step. Appreciate everybody joining this. If there's questions, happy to take questions, happy to connect afterwards. Um, you know, in our world, obviously we're in this business. So if you aren't sure where to start, or you want to dig in deeper for your business in any of these areas, our team's here to support. Our process is to start with a working session to bring clarity to these areas. That's not something we charge for. It's how we're qualifying. Are there places where this business needs help? And is there a good fit for us, or a suggestion we can make on how they could go and peel it back? It's all about growth at the end of the day. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, again, I'll be sharing the presentation. Feel free to book a meeting, send an email, learn more on the website.